to the Make a Mental Note podcast, where mental health professionals share information and perspectives that illuminate, educate, and is worthy of a mental note. And now your host, Chris Quarto.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris Quarto, and welcome to the Make a Mental Note podcast, and Happy New Year. It's hard to believe we're already in 2016. My family and I just got back from a trip to the wizarding world of Harry Potter down in Orlando, Florida. And if you're a Harry Potter fan and you've never been to this place, you've got to take a trip. They have made this place look just what it looks like. If you've seen the movies, Diagon Alley, Hogsmeade, just everything is so authentic, and so many people and so many cool things to see and do. So this has made me feel invigorated. And that actually pertains to my mental health tip for today, which is finding balance. Take a look at yourself and determine whether you have balance in your life. Are you working too much and not doing things for fun? Are you maybe doing the opposite, maybe doing too many things that you like to do and not really taking other things as seriously as you need to? Whatever the case is, try to find balance in your life. For me, it's going out to dinner with my wife or taking walks, so I'm not working all the time, or going to Harry Potter World for that matter. But for you, it might be different. But take a look at yourself and try to find that balance, because that's what will contribute to your mental health. So that's my mental health tip for today. Well, today's guest, it's the first guest of 2016 is Summer Lall. She's a music therapist, and I think that you'll really like this interview. So here's Summer. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to the Make a Mental Note podcast. Thanks for joining me. Well, today's guest is Summer Lall. She is a board-certified music therapist in Los Angeles. And welcome to the podcast, Summer.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've never had a music therapist on the podcast before, and we're trying to expand and do some different things and let listeners find out more about, some types of therapy that aren't traditional types of therapy. So I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do for a living.
Sure, of course. So I'm a music therapist. I've been one since 2008, and I worked in a youth facility called Optimist Youth Homes and Family Services out of Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
And basically I'm the full-time music therapist here, and it serves youth aged 12 to 18 that have been court-mandated to be here because of low-level crimes, and it's more of a restorative approach rather than, punishment.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. So,
yeah.
As a music therapist, I was a music major actually when I first started college, and I got out of it after a year because it wasn't very fun. But but I do have an appreciation for music, and I still do it avocationally. But what kind of background or training, I guess, do you have to be a music therapist?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. Basically, there's something called the AMTA, which is the American Music Therapy Association, and they oversee everything as well as the Certified Board of Music Therapists, which is a national accreditation. And all of us have to go through 4 years of school, or you can go into a mastery program.
Okay.
And then there's also, so it's my actual degree is in music therapy, and then you do a 1,000-hour internship.
Okay.
And then you pass a board certified exam and then keep up your CEUs every 5 years.
Okay. Well, here's the $64,000 question: is why did you go into this field? I mean, this is a fascinating field. So why did you go into it?
It felt exactly right to me. I didn't know what it was, like many people don't or have. Now I think people are learning, but when I found out about it, I was already in music school. And wasn't ever really drawn to the competitive nature of music,
yes.
But I started as a musician and a songwriter, but I always loved the way music brought people together. So, I took an intro course in music therapy, and every single class I would either be crying or have chills or just feel so moved and impressed by the power of music, something I kind of knew within, but it was really cool to see the science behind it and the practice over 50 plus years. So.
Okay. So let's just kind of look at a typical day for you. So you work at Optimist, and this is with kids between, I think you said 12 and 18. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So just take us through a typical day. Just, what is it that you do with them throughout the course of the day?
Yeah, I think if it's okay, tell you kind of a week.
Yeah.
It's a lot of,
sure.
The week has an arc. So basically, I have mainly 4 different sessions that I do with them. And one of them is music and relaxation. Mm-hmm. So that's using instruments with nice soothing sounds or vibrational qualities, like a buffalo drum, or some people maybe have seen singing bowls or chimes, those kinds of things that they play, and also listening and using music to find, peace and relaxation and connected with breathing techniques and all that. And then the second, which these kids really need, so very helpful. And then the second category I call lyrics and listening, and that's all about what it sounds like, lyrics of songs. It's sort of an easy way in. A lot of us want to talk with our clients about, personal, important issues, but especially with this population, it's a bit hard to get there. So music is a really nice, safe, socially acceptable, culturally cool way to do that. So they'll bring in songs where they connect with the lyrics or all choose them. And we talk about what those lyrics mean. And then we do our own little free write, or we write a rap or a poem or a story with that topic in mind. So it's a really beautiful way to get a conversation going.
Yeah.
And then a lot of interesting topics come up there. And then the next one is active music making, and I call it Instruments and Insight. So that is playing live music together. So drums, sometimes guitar, lots of percussive instruments. A lot of these kids have no background, and you don't need any background in music, obviously, to have music therapy. So we call them success-oriented. So basically, there's no wrong notes, and, rhythm is really intrinsic in our humanity with our heartbeat and our breath and our walking. So once we can get out of our heads, it's a really nice way to express and connect and communicate nonverbally. And we talk a lot about kinds of communication and family dynamics and different emotional states in our life story, all through playing music. So, and there's lots of studies on the benefits of drumming and that kind of stuff. So that's active music making. And then the last one I do is beat making and songwriting. With my kids, beat making is really common just because it's a popular music style for their age group. But basically it's songwriting, and we as a group create a song together, and reveals a lot underneath that, group dynamics, finding your role, confidence, telling your story through song. So group cohesion, all those kinds of things come through in the songwriting one. So those are the main 4 categories that you might see happen. In addition, we do some one-on-one work. Well, they can, call it studio time, and they book time where they can, again, record themselves, write a song, make a CD. Cool. Yeah, so that's kind of what the day looks like.
All right, that's really neat. Well, I was thinking as you were talking about, I think it was the second one, the lyrics, that, I would guess that these kids, at least some of the kids, come in here. Did you say that they were court mandated?
Yes.
Okay. So I would imagine that some of these kids come in here, they're not really thrilled about having to be in the program, but they're here and they have to participate. I would imagine that having them, get into the lyrics and stuff like that, it's almost like a backdoor approach to getting them to talk about their feelings. If they're not going to talk about feelings directly or whatever the case, whatever brought them into your facility to begin with, that maybe having them do it this way is kind of a backdoor approach to getting them to talk about some of these issues. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's non-threatening. So it exactly is that. And it's a way to build rapport and kind of have an easy in. And also, on top of that, when you listen to music or play music, it sort of bypasses all the, guards and things that the kids put up, the walls.
Yeah.
And a lot of studies show, too, that music is processed the amygdala of the brain, which is the emotional center, and the memory center. So you're getting right to the core immediately if you're playing a significant song or creating music in unison, as opposed to trying to go through the cortex with all the defenses. And so that's really nice.
Well, the neat thing about it, Summer, is that, music is something that all of us have in common, well, especially kids that age, and it's something that they can relate to. So I think that you have that going for you. And I think that when you were talking about, bypassing the wall or the defenses, I think that music can play such a positive role in that way. Well, when you work with these kids, do they have common types of things that they discuss with you, or common types of issues that sort of end up coming up as a topic of discussion, and how does all that work?
Yeah, well, because of the population I serve, there's definitely some commonalities. I mean, poverty is a big one. That's not really the word they use, but growing up in the hood or the ghetto or, the jungle. So, and then all the issues that come along with that, there's a lot of, we mainly serve minorities. So there's race that comes up. I mainly work with boys. There's a lot of gang history. We talk a lot about that and what that means and where it came from and what they're really looking for. And, just open conversations of family dynamics. I mean, I think that's common across the board.
Yeah.
And drug issues also come up a lot. So I would say those are the main ones that tend to surface.
And I wonder if there's a feeling of helplessness about, I'm not going to be able to change things for the better, or, do you find that they have that kind of an outlook, like, things are hopeless or helpless, or, things just aren't going to work out the way I want them to? Does that ever come up?
It does. Every person I work with has a different mentality, obviously, but and I see also, because they're here usually from 6 to 12 months, I see a cycle and a change. Sometimes they're resistant at first, and then they warm up and they do well in their program and they're more hopeful, but then it gets close to them leaving and some of them don't have anywhere to go, or they might be in foster care, or we do have a transitional living program here where we teach them to get jobs and fill out applications and do life skills. So that's nice, but still there's a lot of unknowns. So then new behaviors will resurface of fear. It's really all fear underneath. But I do see hopefulness too, and some of the clients I work with, are really connected to where they're from and don't want to deny that history or leave that past, but they want to be different within it.
Yeah.
And some are, like you're saying, I can't change. This is how dad and grandpa and uncle and sister, we're all in the gang, and half of them are in jail, and and that's just life. And so those are the ones that's really hard to win over in that way, but you just hope you give them enough skills to, not reoffend and to have a fulfilled life. But you just got to count the ones that work out as the big wins.
Exactly. So what kind of skills are you trying to teach them through music? What are you hoping to teach them, or they'll get out of the program?
I think the first one is awareness. And just perspective. That's something that I think is extremely important, especially since they're teenagers and they only know what they've seen and lived. So I really like the experience of seeing how they act and react in situations, and how they've been brought up to act and react, and what they've known, and see there's other ways. Teaching them skills of having that pause between the event and the reaction, really learning to make wise decisions and just take breaths and trust their instincts and their intuition, as well as have really positive interactions with peers that don't have to do with negative, involvement and whatever, and having that feeling of belonging and overall a sense of purpose, and a sense of looking forward to their future and wanting to have a happy, fulfilled life. That's really my goal, is to get them to a place where they want to try for that and believe they can and have the support they need, or at least the resources to find the support.
Well, and I guess that's what the gang, their gang involvement has given them, I suppose, is a sense of belonging. And when they get into this program, perhaps you try to help them find out different ways of doing that, or ways that aren't going to get them into trouble, or just looking for positive alternatives, I guess.
Right, exactly. And finding other ways too. I mean, I always thought it's definitely a sense of belonging, but talking with them, realize it's also really a sense of providing and making money. I mean, it's resources, resources and connections and respect and power, and it's so many things, but finding other ways to get that, right? Like helping them get a job, or do really well in school so they can go to college, and when you really get down to their dreams, it's really inspiring. But it's hard to get them to say their dreams because I constantly, well, this can't happen, but if it could, I mean, it won't, but if it could, and trying to be like, let's talk about that. What does that look like, and what would we need to do?
It almost reminds me, I don't know if you've ever studied, Maslow's hierarchy of needs in your studies, but, Maslow was the guy that said, well, we have these needs, in that we have to satisfy our basic needs first, need for food, water, that kind of stuff. And we're not going to be motivated to do other types of things until we satisfy those basic needs. And once those are satisfied, then we kind of move up the ladder. And I would imagine that with people in poverty, they're trying to really to satisfy just those very basic elements that you were talking about before they can even look at, other things, like we talk about self-actualization and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's so far up there, and it doesn't really, I don't think, have a lot of meaning for people when they're struggling just to put food on the table, or where am I going to make some money to survive?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and provide for my family.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can be really tough.
So now, do these kids, do they actually play instruments as part of this program?
So some of them we do a little bit of adaptive lessons, but in music therapy, it's typically not to teach how to play an instrument. I see that more as a side effect.
Okay.
You might learn. But a lot of my kids that we work with have natural rhythm, and several of them have played drums, at least in like a drum line, or really connect with rhythm, because a lot of the music they like is super rhythmic based.
Yes.
But I mean, I've met very few that have actually played an instrument and had lessons in it, so that's pretty rare. I have a lot of kids that love to sing as well and rap, and are very talented at rapping, and the singers have a lot of, raw talent that hasn't been refined yet. So there's interest there, of course. But since so many music courses have been cut from schools and there's no extra income to take private lessons, that rarely have they ever had a background in it.
So how do you tap into those natural abilities, Summer, to help these kids with the things that they're struggling with?
Well, in music therapy, it's not so much about what the music sounds like, although they're motivated to sound well, but I guess the natural ability for some, if they're insecure, is to get them to trust themselves, and that in itself is a way of, it's therapeutic, right?
Sure.
Because not only are you doing it in the music, but you realize, wow, this feels so good, I can carry this over into other parts of my life, and I do have internal rhythm if I just stop overthinking it. And trust my body's rhythms, and same with singing, but really it's not so much about their inner talent, is their trusting their instincts and their intuition, and enjoying the feeling. When you think about music, like before there was iPods and even records, right?
Yeah.
Before we could record it, unless you're going to some concert, you pretty much had to make it to hear it. And make it together. And so I feel like I really believe there's like a cellular memory of that in all of us. And when we make music together, just for the sake of making music and for the joy of connection, like it really doesn't matter what it sounds like or what the latent talent in you is. It's just about community.
Yeah.
and building that strong force of community that, like you said, is that a game can offer, but in a really positive, powerful way.
Right. So when you're working with these kids, what are they like when they first come in to see you? Let's say that that's the first time they're coming in to participate in music therapy. What are they like when they first participate?
Yeah, when I haven't met them, they're everybody's different, but some of them are guarded, unsure. They're testing. Want to see. A lot of these kids grew up without boundaries.
Yeah.
So they want to test their limits.
Sure.
That's a big part. Also, there's the simplicity of, am I safe in here? Do I trust the other kids?
Mm-hmm.
They're testing me. How will she react if I do this or that? There's a huge curiosity element of, because my room is full of instruments and things to look at, and so what's this? There's a little bit like rein it in. Let's do focus. But after a few sessions, I have a pretty set way of doing it that they can count on, like as far as like a centering thing.
Sure.
Getting present and then closure. And so once they know how it goes, they seem to come in pretty excited and eager, unless something just happened, and then they're bringing that into the room.
Yeah, so they kind of learn the routine as it goes along, and what's expected of them, and so on and so forth.
There's some apprehension sometimes, for sure.
Okay. What kind of feelings do you see these kids showing or struggling with? I imagine that some of them might be angry. What types of feelings do you see them struggling with, and how does music therapy seem to help them with those feelings?
They struggle with all the feelings you can imagine. A lot of them have anxiety and sleep difficulties, and they have a hard time. A lot of them come from trauma. I guess I forgot to mention that.
Okay.
And many are diagnosed with PTSD.
Sure.
And also, some learning disorders, special needs, you name it. So there's a lot of different things happening. But as far as emotions, there's anxiety, there is anger for sure. That's a safer emotion than sadness for them.
Right.
So that's shown first. Drumming is amazing. Rap, like certain music that is that matches their emotion at that time, is great because it helps validate and release the feeling. So, like, imagine just going at it on a drum. That's really releasing, or putting on their favorite music that they feel like understood, and then gradually bringing them back to baseline. So that's called the ISO principle. So whatever feeling you're going through that you want to change, you don't just play a song that is incongruent with that feeling. You actually match the feeling.
I see.
And then you would gradually, over maybe a half hour, shift the song from an angry song to like a more upbeat kind of angry song to a mid-tempo to a, so that it gradually brings you out of it without completely invalidating the feeling.
Okay.
I see a lot of kids shut down. Crying isn't super popular here. I mean, it happens, but usually they'll run out of the room. But a lot of times they'll just be totally, won't talk, shut down. And in that way, again, listening to relevant music from their life is really helpful.
Yeah.
Because you can get to the emotions again, but also playing music together because it's nonverbal. So really not asking to talk about it or go into detail.
It's safer.
It's safe, and it opens in a different way. And we're working with different parts of the brain that tend to have more of a say during fight or flight response anyway, right? It's not like we were saying, the frontal lobe and neocortex are more in the creative centers. So it's a nice, like you said, backdoor approach, but really helps to release the feelings. And sometimes it's simply distraction. Like if they're having fun making a beat, or we're doing the relaxation techniques, we're shifting the focus from the problem that we're obsessing over into the moment and either relaxing or having fun creating. So
yeah, that's fascinating. Now, I know that a lot of places have work as a team. The professionals work as a team to help the kids. So whether it's the music therapist, maybe there's an art therapist, just a individual therapist, family, whatever, that they meet on a weekly basis maybe to discuss the kids and figure out, okay, this is kind of what we're trying to do with this kid, so let's see if we can focus on this with him this week. Is that an approach that you use at your place or not so much?
Yeah, definitely. We also have an art therapist, and she and I meet every day to talk about, ideas and the kids and what's working, what isn't, and also with our supervisor. And then every kid has a primary therapist as well, so we communicate with them regularly. And then we have treatment team meetings where we meet with one kid, with all their treatment team, and we talk with the kid is present, and ask him, how are you doing in your program? What are your goals? Are we getting there? How can we support you?
Okay.
Can you tell us about your history, so that we can, know them, and then also figure out the best way to treat them.
Okay.
And then there's tons of different meetings, and yes, it's all about team effort. There's a lot of staff here, 300 staff, so
wow.
It's all about communication and working together.
Is are families involved as well, Summer?
Yeah, there's family therapy that happens on Tuesdays and Wednesdays here, that their primary therapist leads those sessions, and everyone's present, and the families that are there sit in the middle with the resident. And everyone else gives feedback and watches the therapy take place. Okay.
So how do you know, that you're working as a team to help these kids? And I was going to ask you before I ask you my next question, how long are they typically in your program?
So they're at Optimus 6 to 12 months. With our groups, they happen in 3-month chunks, and then they can change groups. So we offer, like I said, I offer those 4 different groups, and then the art therapist offers 4 different groups as well. And so most of the kids will get 2 different ones they cycle through. And if they're here a year, they'll get probably around 4.
Okay.
So we want them to try a lot of different things, see what works, and it builds upon itself.
Okay.
Since she and I work so closely. So
how do you know, well, let me ask you this first. How do you know when one of these kids are showing improvement in the work that you're doing with them? I know that they might show gains in other sorts of ways, but just in what you do in music therapy, how would you know if one of these kids are starting to show improvements in relation to their goals?
Yeah, do you mean just within my session?
Yeah, just within your session. And then I'm going to ask more about that just kind of more globally within your program. I'm just kind of looking at your session right now, though.
Sure. I think sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's pretty clear. Is the way they interact with others, so the people in the group setting, and with me. It really depends on their goals. If some of them are extremely, they have, like, we call it cagey, like pacing around, can't sit still, kind of resistant and even combative in some ways, not physically, but just verbally. So if you're seeing that person be still for the whole group, that's huge, like sit and just be present with us instead of resisting it. That's a big, but then another one is if someone's really withdrawn in the beginning, they start to share that. I see that a lot in the changes. It's going from like guarded and withdrawn to sharing and open. And my favorite, which I see usually at the very end, is even further, is to supporting and encouraging their peers. Oh,
wow. That's cool.
So that's a huge one. And I see even sometimes friendships form in the groups that are like helping each other to stay up and stay positive, and that's really great to see. And then every once in a while I'll have a resident that connects well with me, and they'll come seek me out to do further practice and open up and talk one-on-one. So that's how I see it within. And you just see that the group is more cohesive and works better together and listens fully and, supports one another is the biggest one.
Do you find that there's anything in, all the repertoire of techniques and things that you do as a music therapist, do you find that there's a particular approach or a technique that really seems to have more impact on kids and helping them achieve their goals, or not necessarily?
I like them all. I mean, I just think they fit. They fit different personalities.
Sure.
So it depends, like some kids love to play instruments.
And
they just have so much excess energy. And at the same time, some will not talk to you. So those two would be great for the active music making.
Right.
And really breaking it down. And that group really talks a lot about the communication styles and future plans and our life stories. And so that's like a nonverbal way of getting pretty deep.
Yes.
It becomes verbal, but at first. And then if a kid really loves it depends on what motivates them. Like, if they're motivated by writing music and creating and, making a beat, then that's going to be the most effective because they are motivated by the result. And then, again, at the end, oh, my gosh, it was really about supporting my peers and growing together and being the best I could be. And then some of them, like I said, have a lot of anxiety and sleep trouble, and the relaxation group is wonderful for them. Or have a hard time with exploding or building up anger and not knowing how to, calm down before communicating with family and staff. And then the lyric one is good again for garden, but I can't choose. That's why I use all of them.
What I hear you saying is that you have to tailor it, don't you? It all depends on the boy or on the client. Is it boys? Did you say?
I primarily work with boys. We have 2 girls group homes, but they don't have the music therapy with me.
So basically, you have to tailor your approach to the issues and how the boys are presenting themselves to you, and hopefully they'll open up or they'll make improvements. Now, you're one part of this treatment program, so. What is it that the boys have to kind of do, just kind of generally speaking, to get to the point of transitioning on to the next program?
So basically, unless they're going to what's called the independent living program, they go home or to foster care out of here. And it's all based on the judge. They have to go to court several times. They have a PO, a probation officer. So it's really driven by that.
Okay.
They lay kind of the mandates on what is a good program and what their goals are. And usually the goals are around substance abuse. Obviously their grades. We have a school on site, so how they're doing in school and their grades improving and that kind of thing. And then how they're acting in the dorms, the amount of outbursts, the amount of physicals, we call them, so violent fighting, needs to decrease. And they get, where I work, they get things called treatment issues or serious incident reports if something happens. So they want to reduce those kinds of things, kind of like getting a ticket, So those are really measurable ways that they're saying, like, how many of these are we getting? Are you improving your behavior? Like, it's very, like, concrete, like, for the judge. This is what's going on.
Do you use, like, a behavioral program, like goals, like you have to show certain amount of progress before you can kind of move up a level, and if you move up a level, you get more privileges, or don't you have?
They have that. I don't deal with that a lot. That's the dorm, and they're primary therapists, but they can move to what's called level 2, and they get more privileges. But we're not a locked facility, so they're here. They can walk off any time, but they want to complete this. They want to get this stuff off their record. But yeah, if they get more privileges, like I think they, eat special food or get to go around sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a way to do that.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that you run into in your role as a music therapist, Summer?
Biggest challenges are sometimes the communication is hard with such a big group of staff.
All right.
So that's really, really important to make sure. And, practicing what we preach and teach is showing that we're able to communicate effectively. With our kids, sometimes they'll get scheduled to have a doctor's appointment or go on an outing, or they're in a different group. Their time is so limited that if they don't show up for group, it's really tough because there's really no other time to make it up. And you have as many of your listeners will know, you're building on something, and you're building trust and rapport and within not just yourself and the client, but the whole group. So if kids are constantly not showing up or getting pulled out or interrupted, for me, that's really frustrating because I put so much love and care into it, and I want the best outcome.
Sure.
So that can be a challenge in, I think, all settings that are like this. When I used to work in psych, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
When the doctor's there, that takes precedent. When the PO's there, that takes, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we work on that, but the kids' time is really short because we don't like them to be idle.
Yep.
And we give them a lot of services. So that is challenging as a therapist, for sure. And then the other challenging thing about where I'm working, not necessarily, because music therapy is a huge umbrella. I mean, this is a very small sect of music therapy. People work with Alzheimer's or cancer patients or autism. But with my population, the balance between punishment and reward kind of vibe and a therapeutic approach. So when I have to, because most therapists wouldn't have to monitor too much what they say and write them up for saying something or go, give them a treatment issue, what we call it. And that can breach trust.
Yes.
But you have to do your job in some ways. In other ways, you're trying to build this trust. So that's hard. And then the other one that is always hard is this a reward or is this part of your treatment? And a lot of people see it as a reward, but it's not. Like, don't hold them out of music therapy because they're not doing well. Like, that's when they need to come.
Right.
So that is a challenge. And then I just thought of another one, is music making it worse or better? There's the ongoing debate about the lyrics in the music and how it influences people, and is it fueling the fire or is it calming them? So that is a forever.
That's an age-old debate, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So I'd say those are the main ones.
Oh boy. Well, you have to strike a balance. It sounds like. I mean, especially if there comes a time having to set a limit with the boys, but yet not wanting that to have a negative impact on what you're trying to accomplish. So it sounds like there's a delicate balance that way, but there are a lot of challenges, not only in working with the boys, but as a treatment team, making sure that everybody's on the same page. I can as you were talking about that, I was thinking, well, if these boys saw staff members get into a disagreement about something, it could be the same thing that they see at home, couldn't it? When parents disagree or when there's conflict and things aren't working out, and it's sort of the same sort of dynamic. So I'm sure that you guys have to make sure that you're on the same page as much as you can be anyway. Yeah,
and I think that it's in some ways very different than what they saw at home, because we are trying to model effective assertive communication.
Right.
And there's tons of trainings that all of the staff go through, so they do the due diligence to make sure that those things aren't really happening. Like, there's no triggers or associations, at least minimizing it, so that the staff are working well together. But yeah, and of course the other challenge is then when they leave, what's the support? What's the family showing? What are they going back to after all of this?
Right.
Are you just sending everyone back to where they came from and starts over? So that's obviously what we don't want.
Right.
So that's a big challenge of the outside world. And I mean, it gets bigger and bigger. Then there's the socioeconomic thing and the racial thing. And, it gets big. So I just have to keep it with my one kid at a time. That's right. And see the small successes.
That's right. Well, this last part of the interview is what I call the make a mental note. And I'm wondering if there's any tips that you have for the audience in terms of what they can do to improve their mental health. Maybe there's something along the lines of what you do with your kids, some sort of technique or skill that you're trying to do with them. What is it that you could tell the audience that they could use to kind of help them if they're feeling down or they're struggling with something? Do you have any ideas along those lines, Summer?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, but I guess the simplest is the best. And I know you've heard this answer a million times probably, but what works and what I tell my kids is really deep breathing, trying to take a pause. Yes. I imagine the breath is flowing in and out of my heart area, because studies show that where you focus your breath changes that area, and so the heart can send better messages to the brain.
I see.
So some heart-focused breathing. And then also, as far as music goes, I would say there's so many things, but if you can put on that song, usually people can think of a song that you either love or that is perfect for that moment.
Right.
and play that, because it can really, I mean, music is really powerful in transforming and eliciting emotion.
I think
more so than most things.
And I agree with that. I mean, I kind of think back to my adolescence, breaking up with a girlfriend or something, listening to songs. There really is something to say about how music is therapeutic and can help you through difficult times, and it could be a lot of different things, but there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah. And I would tell people too, don't be afraid of your own voice. Sing as much as you can, because again, studies show singing is extremely good for you, and no one cares what you sound like, especially in the car, in the shower. So sing as much as you can.
That's right. That's good words of wisdom right there. Well, Summer, if people want to learn more about Optimist or to contact you, how can they do that?
You can learn about Optimist it stands for Optimist Youth Home and Family Services.org. So it's OYHFS.org. I also have a personal music therapy organization I started called Rhythm and Truth.
All right.
So you could look that up as well, rhythmandtruth.org.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure and put that on the show notes. So if people want to learn more and investigate, they can do that.
Awesome.
Well, Summer, thanks so much for joining me today. This was it was really neat to learn about this stuff, and it sounds like you're doing great work at Optimist, and keep up the good work.
No, thanks so much for having me.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Sure. Bye.
Okay, I really enjoyed that interview with Summer. I learned a lot about music therapy, and I hope you did too. And I think one of the main things that I took away from this interview is how music therapy it's really more of a non-directive approach to helping kids tap into their feelings and changing their behavior. I think it was really interesting to listen to how Summer finds music to help kids identify with their primary emotion in the moment. She was talking about drumming as a way of helping them identify with anger, and then transitioning to different types of songs to help them explore different types of feelings that they might have. And that's a less threatening way of getting them to explore and talk about feelings. So it was just very fascinating stuff. Well, you remember that since learning enhances mental health, I wanted to ask you something about this podcast to see what you learned. What's a skill or a goal that Summer hopes kids will gain from music therapy? She had talked about this. There are actually 4 of them. One of the things she talked about is she hopes that kids will gain awareness and perspective, maybe to see how they act and react in situations. And then learning other ways of reacting and to make wise decisions. That was another one. And she also talked about developing and maintaining positive interactions with peers. And also just to have a sense of purpose in life. So I think those were the primary things that she hoped that kids would get out of participating in music therapy. Well, if you want to learn more about Summer and about what she does, check out her company's website, Rhythm and Truth. Rhythm is spelled RHYTHM, so rhythmandtruth.org. And you'll learn a little bit more about what she's doing in the community. Also, if you want to check out Optimist Youth Homes and Family Services, like she said, it's OYHF as in Frank, S.org. Do me a favor as a New Year's resolution. Tell one person about the Make a Mental Note podcast and encourage them to listen to at least one episode. I'm trying to increase the listenership. I've already got a lot of listeners, and I really appreciate you and everybody else who's listening. I like more people to listen to this, especially if you're a graduate student in a helping profession like counseling, psychology, or social work. Tell one of your fellow students about this. I think that they would really find this to be helpful. I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and keep listening.